Okay, this is grade 8. Today is March 3rd. We're working on surface area, and we're focusing on the surface area of two shapes, that being the rectangular right prism and the triangular right prism. So the first question that we have here is question 3. It says find the surface area of this right rectangular prism to the nearest tenth of a square centimeter. So there are two methods that you learned how to do. The first method is to draw a net. So if I break down this three-dimensional shape into a two-dimensional flat surface, we can see all 6 faces. Now, what I can then do is label them. I can call this one the bottom. And if that's the bottom, this one over here will be the top, if I broke it down. We can call this one the front. We can call this one the back. We can call this one the left, and this one the right. So what we have here is we have all 6 faces, of this box broken down like if you were breaking down a box at home to put out for recycling. That is what we can kind of imagine it looking like. So once we've done that, because every face of a rectangular prism is a rectangle, then the formula will be used to calculate the area of each independent face will be length multiplied by width. So if I first think about this bottom face, we'll start with the bottom. What are the dimensions of that bottom face? Well, they are 13.5 by 5.5. So if I write my formula, area equals length times width, the length being 13.5 and the width being 5. If I multiply those two together, I will get the area of the bottom face. Take my calculator. 13.5 multiplied by 5 is 67.5. So if I take that, I can physically write that number on my net of the prism. And if the bottom is 67.5, we know that the top face and the bottom face are the exact same rectangle. So therefore, without doing the math again, I know that the area of the top face, which I will also shade in black, is the same. So we have the top and the bottom both being 67.5 centimeters squared. So 67.5 square centimeters of space, or square units inside that. If I then think about the back, I'll take another marker and I'll do the front. I'll shade it in red. So what are the dimensions of that red face? Well, here we have 18.5 by 13.5. So our length times width will be 18.5 multiplied by 13.5. Grab a calculator. 18.5 multiplied by 13.5 gives us an area of the front of 249.75 centimeters squared. So that's going to be the front, 249.75 centimeters squared. And we know also that the same rectangle is found on the back. So therefore, that is also 249.75. And finally, if I did the left-hand side or the right-hand side, this one I can see, so I'll just shade it in green. Its dimensions are 18.5 and 5. So 18.5 multiplied by 5, 18.5 multiplied by 5 is 92.5. So this one would be 92.5 centimeters squared, and this one would be 92.5 centimeters squared. So what we've done is we've broken down this 6-sided rectangular prism into a net, calculated the independent sides as area, and all we would have to do now is add them up. So I can either do 249.75 plus 249.75, or 249.75 multiplied by 2, because there's 2 of them, this one and this one, and, or plus 67.5 multiplied by 2, because there's this one and this one, and there's 92.5 multiplied by 2 for this one and this one. If I solve that with a calculator, 249.75 multiplied by 2 equals plus 67.5 multiplied by 2 equals plus 92.5 multiplied by 2 equals 2,000. I did something wrong. Let's try that again. Oh, I think I know. Oh, sorry. Here's what I did. So 249.75 multiplied by 2 is 499.5. I'm going to write that down here. So 499.5 plus my 67.5 and multiply it by 2. I get 135 even plus 92.5 multiplied by 2 is 185. Write that down and then add those together. So when I add those together, I take 185 plus 135 plus 499. Oh, I guess I got the right answer. Is it, or 0.5? Is it 819.5? Is that the answer? 819.5. And don't forget, when you're done, you can't just leave it like that. You must express it in proper units, because I know if you write centimeters squared, you know exactly what you were looking for. You know that it's area, and you know those units squared are what you're looking for. Now, alternatively, you could have been smart, and you could have written your formula, which of course is 2LW plus 2LW plus 2LW. And then you could clarify what these LWs are. You could say TB here. You could say FB here for front back, and LR for left right. Substitute your data in. So the top and bottom were 13.5 by 5. So you have two of those that are 13.5 by 5. And the FB, the front back, are two sides that are 18.5 multiplied by 13.5. And you have two sides that are left and right, which are 18.5 multiplied by 5. When you do this, you will get something like this here, except maybe not in that order, it might be in a different order. But you will eventually get to that stage right here, and therefore you will eventually get the same answer of 819.5 centimeters squared. Your second question, or question 5, gives you a triangular prism this time, and it asks you to calculate the surface area. So you can do it with a formula, or you can do it with a net. This time I will do it with a net. So or with a formula. So if I think about what this would look like if I broke it down, that would be what the net looks like if I broke down a triangular prism into its 5 faces. Now this is, a triangle has a length of 1.4, or a height of 1.4, a base of 2.3, and a hypotenuse of 2.7. So what we know about this triangle is it's right, but it's also a scalene triangle in that none of the sides are the same length. So we know that all 3 of these rectangles, this one and this one and this one, are all going to have the same measurement here, which is 0.7 meters, but they're going to have different measurements here. So we think about this as being the bottom. This will be 0.7 by 2.3. This would be the bottom here, and if I shaded that in, that bottom rectangle would be that one. If I think about the top one, which I'll shade in red, we can call it the slanty part, maybe the red one here. We can make that 0.7 by 2.7. So we'll make that one the slant part. We'll make this one the bottom part. And then finally we have the back part, or the back rectangle, which we can kind of see because it's 3-dimensional. It's this rectangle right here. And that would be 0.7 still. 0.7 multiplied by 1.4. Okay? So now we have, and we'll call this one the back. All right, I've just changed my picture because the other picture to me was confusing. So now I have S for slant, B for bottom, BA for back, L for left, and R for right. So rectangles are length times width. So for this slant, I'm going to multiply these two together. I'm going to take 0.7 and multiply it by 2.7 to find out that the area of that rectangle is 1.89 meters squared. So I'm going to put 1.89 meters. I'm just going to leave it over there because I don't have any room in my net. The bottom is 0.7 times 2.3. 0.7 multiplied by 2.3 means the bottom rectangle has an area of 1.61 meters squared. And finally, the back, or that green shaded side that's still there, is going to be 0.7 multiplied by 1.4, which will be 0.7 times 1.4 equals 0.98. So far, we have 1, 2, 3 areas of the 5 faces that make up the triangular prism. The only one we have to calculate last is our triangle base, which I will shade nicely in red here. So this triangle face, there are 2 identical versions of it, one on that side, one on the other. And the formula for the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. The base in that red triangle that I shaded in is 2.3. The height is the perpendicular distance from the base to the apex, which is 1.4 divided by 2. So if we simplify that, we go 2.3 times 1.4 equals, divide that by 2, and each triangle has an area of 1.61, and there's times 2 because there's 2 of those triangles. So if we add this, and this, and this, and this twice, I will have the surface area of my triangular prism. So I got 1.61 plus another 1.61 for the 2 triangles, plus a 1.89, plus a 0.98, plus finally the last one, which was 1.61. And my total surface area for this triangular prism is 7.7. Is that right? Did I make a mistake there, or is that right? 7.7 meters squared is the total surface area for that triangular prism. Question 11 gives you 3 cubes. It says Dallas wants to paint the 3 cubes. The cubes measure 1 by 1 by 1, 2 by 2 by 2, and 3 by 3 by 3, respectively. What total surface area will Dallas paint if he decides not to paint the bottoms of the 3 cubes? So if we think about this cube, as a net, each face will be 1 meter by 1 meter, which means the face of this, just one face of that cube is 1 square meter. And since he's not going to paint the bottom, that means that the surface area of that cube will be 5 meters squared. In the second cube, the face of this cube is 2 meters by 2 meters, which means its surface area is 4 meters squared for one face. And since he's not painting the bottom of that cube, he's going to paint that 5 times, which means the area of that cube is 20 meters squared. And finally, the last cube, its face is 3 meters by 3 meters, which means the area of one face of that cube is 9 square meters. And he's going to paint all but the bottom, which is 5 faces, which means that is 45 meters squared. So altogether, how much total surface area will he paint? Well, if he's going to paint all 3 of them, I'm going to add them all together, which means he's going to paint 70 square meters of total surface area if he paints all of those cubes. Adika has a gift to wrap. Both of these containers will hold her gift. Which container will allow her to use the least amount of wrapping paper? Explain your choice. Well, the first thing we need to assume is that in painting in wrapping these boxes, there is no overlapping of surface area, and you can get exactly the amount of wrapping paper onto the surface without overlapping. So that's the first thing we assume. If I'm going to do this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve the surface area of both using the formula. And since there are 2 triangles, both the front and end cap of this particular shape, we're going to use 2 multiplied by base times height divided by 2 to represent the 2 triangles, plus a rectangle, plus a rectangle, plus a rectangle, because there are 3 other rectangles. Over here, we're going to use the formula 2LW for the front and back, plus 2LW to represent the top and bottom, and 2LW to represent the left and right. And if we substitute all of our numbers into these formulas and simplify it, we'll be able to determine which box has the greater surface area. So examining the triangular end cap of the box, we have a base of 10 and a height, which the arrow is pointing to, of 5. So our base is 10 and our height is 5, and we divide that by 2. And now we have these rectangles that make up the other 3 sides. This rectangle here and this rectangle here are actually identical. And what that means is they are both 30 centimeters long multiplied by a length of 7. So we actually have 2 of those 30 by 7s. And then the bottom, which I'm starting to run out of room here, is actually a 30 centimeter long by 10 centimeter wide rectangle. So all 5 sides are represented in that formula. 10 times 5 is 50, divided by 2 is 25, multiplied by 2 is 50, plus 210, plus 210, plus 300. Add those together, you get 300, 400, 500, 600, 700, 770 square centimeters of surface area for the triangular prism. Okay, so when I substitute everything in and add them all together, all 5 sides, independent areas added together will equal 770 centimeters squared. Alternatively, when I look at the other one, the front of this is 10 centimeters long by 30 centimeters tall, so I have two 10 by 30s. Both the front and back are 10 by 30. And the top and bottom, this top shape has a length of 10 and a width of 5, so I have two 10 by 5s for the top and bottom. And I have two shapes which the left and right are going to be 30 by 5, so I have two 30 by 5 shapes. When I simplify this, I have two 300s, which is 600. I have two 50s, which is 100. And I have two 150s, which is 300. So when I simplify that all out, I have 1,000 centimeters squared for the surface area of my rectangular prism. And it says, which container would allow her to use the least amount of wrapping paper? The answer is the triangular prism. How much less does it use? It uses 230 square centimeters less than the rectangular prism would. Question 13 says a square cake pan measures 30 centimeters on each side and is 5 centimeters deep. So if I draw that, I can draw something like this. Although that doesn't look square, that looks rectangular. Let's try this again. So a square so let's go this way and make it square. Oh, that's pretty close. That's not bad. That's better. That's better. So it's 5 centimeters deep, which means I can label this to be 5. And then each of these sides here is going to be 30. It's going to be 30 by 30 centimeters, okay, on each side. Cody wants to coat the inside of the nonstick oil. If a single can of oil, nonstick oil covers an area of 400 centimeters squared, how many pans can be coated? So the first thing we need to do is calculate what is the surface area of this pan. Since it doesn't have a top, it has 1, 2, and then in the back there would be 2 more matching sides to that, and there would be a bottom, but there would not be a top. So this particular prism only has 5 faces. If we think about the red ones that I just coated or colored there, there's 4 of them. There's 4 of those rectangles, which each measure 4, which would be 30 times 5. All of those ones all the way around would be 30 times 5, which means there would be 4 that are 150, or 600 centimeters squared would be the 4 walls of this pan. Plus, there is the bottom of the pan, which is just a 30 by 30, or a 900 centimeters squared. Oops. So altogether, with those 5 faces together inside, one pan has 1,500 centimeters squared of surface area. Okay, now that's one can, or that's one pan. If one can of nonstick oil will do this, what you're going to take is take the whole can, what it's capable of doing, divide it by the surface area of one can, and that will tell you how many pans you can coat with one can. So take your 400,000, which is how much one can coat, divide it by the surface area of one pan, and that will tell you, is that right? Did I make a mistake somewhere? Is that right? Okay. Therefore, or 266 2/3. So therefore, one can coat. Well, that's funny. One can coat 266. Did it again. And 2/3 pans. Almost 267 pans it can coat. Okay? Does that make sense? The walls of the pan are this much surface area. The bottom of the pan is this. So one pan has this much surface area. If you take how much one can coat, divided by the surface area of each pan, that tells me you can do 266.6 repeating, or 266 and 2/3 pans. And your last question is fairly complicated. So it says, Shelby wants to paint the walls and ceiling of a rectangular room. So they cut the ceiling off just to show you what it looks like. The wall paint, the prices are there. 4 liters. A 4-liter can can cost you $24.99. A 1-liter can will cost you $7.99. And ceiling paint for 4 liters will cost you $32.95. And then this is a very important statement. It says 1 liter of paint covers 9.5 meters squared. So your first question says, what is the least amount of paint Shelley can buy to paint the room? Subtract 5 meters squared for the doors and windows. So you want to first, what's asking you essentially is, what is the surface area of the room, right? What is the surface area of the room? So if we look at this, I'm going to break down my room into the 4 walls. There is the left wall. That is the, oh, hold on, I got to do this differently. I got to rotate it. So if I open this up, I would have this one here as being the front. This one here as being the side wall. This one here as being the back wall. And this one here being the one across from them. So if I broke down the walls, this being the front, this being that window wall, this being the back wall, and this being the other one, let's call it other, right? We can kind of get an idea for our net. Our net's weird looking because it doesn't have a ceiling attached to it. So what we're going to, and actually we can attach the ceiling, we'll attach the ceiling right here. Right? We'll even call this the ceiling. Spelled wrong. It doesn't have a floor because you're not going to paint a floor. That would be ridiculous. Oh, ceiling spelled right. I did spell it right. So if you think about the front will be a rectangle that is 2.6 multiplied by 4.8. So when I multiply those two numbers together, 2.6 multiplied by 4.8, the area of that wall is 12.48. Okay. Now we're not going to worry about the door because it tells us at the end just subtract 5 from your total. So if the front's 12.48, the back wall will also be 12.48 because we're not going to worry about the doors. Okay. Our window wall, which is this wall here, is 6.8. So the length and width is 6.8 multiplied by 2.6. So the window wall will be 6.8 multiplied by 2.6, which is 17.68. And this other wall will be 17.68. Even though the windows are there, we're going to subtract at the end. All right. And we're first going to calculate the walls because we don't want the ceiling to be factored into our total what we have to buy because ceiling paint costs more. So we're just going to figure out this first. So if I take those numbers and add them together, I get 12.48 plus 17.68 plus an additional 12.48 plus an additional 17.68. So for walls, I forget what that number is. I have 60.32 square meters of wall space to cover, minus the 5 meters squared it said for the doors. I think it said that somewhere. So overall, we must paint 55.32 meters squared of walls only. Okay? Now, if we add on the ceiling to that, the ceiling of this room, I'll do that real quick. The ceiling is that green one there. And the ceiling will be 4.8 multiplied by 6.8, or 4.8 multiplied by 6.8 is 32.64, 32.64 meters squared of area up there. Okay, so ceiling is 32.64 meters squared. So altogether for A, it says, what's the least amount of paint Shelley can buy? Let's figure this out first. So for wall paint, she could buy 2 of these, which will give her 48. Oh, sorry, that's not right. My mistake. Let's do this again. 1 liter of paint will cover 9.5 meters squared. So if I take the total surface area of the walls I need to paint and divide it by 9.5, so take the total surface area of the wall she has to paint and divide it by 9.5, which is what 1 liter of paint can do, that tells me I need to buy 5.82 liters. I need to buy 5.82 liters of paint to do the walls. And if I divide this by 9.5 for the ceiling, take my 32.64 divided by what 1 can of paint can do, 9.5 square meters. I need to buy 3.43 liters of ceiling paint. Okay. So that's what we first do. How much paint will I need to buy? I need to buy those 2 amounts of both wall paint and ceiling paint. So once we get that, we're on to our last stage. It says, how much will the paint cost? Since I have to buy 5.82 liters, it will be cheaper for me to buy 1 can of 4 liters and 2 cans of 1 liter. So I'm going to have $24.95 plus $7.99 plus $7.99. I only need to buy 6 liters. I can't buy half-liter cans, or I can't buy 0.82 liters. So I'm going to buy 6 liters of that paint. And probably what you would have bought is you probably would have bought 8 liters. In the real world, you would have bought 8. Why?
In case you needed to, it scratch the paint off.
If you ever need to do a touch-up 5-10 years down the road, you want to have still a good leftover bunch of paint so that, correct, you don't want to have to match it. But in this case, it's not asking for that. It says the minimum amount of paint. So if we add this together, take my calculator and go $24.95 plus $7.99 plus $7.99 means the total cost for your wall paint will be $40.93. That can't be, can it? Yes, it can. So for wall paint, $40.93. But ceiling paint's more expensive. Now for a 4-liter can of that, it's $32.95. And since I only need 3.43, I just have to buy the 1 can, which means the cost of the ceiling paint will just be the $32.95. So my total bill, including the amount of tax charged in your region, so here's how we do it. We take $32.95 for the ceiling paint. Add to that 40.93 cents. The total before tax is $73.88. Now, does anyone remember how do I calculate sales tax of 15% with one go to the calculator button? One go to. What if I multiplied it by 1? What happens? Same answer. What's sales tax in Prince Edward Island? So if I multiply it by 1, that's the cost of the paint, and 0.15, that's 15%. So that 1 represents the cost of the paint, and 0.15 represents the tax. Press the equals button. Your final total is $84.96 with tax.